All right. So I'm wondering if people at home can hear us. Good
morning.
Can people at home hear us? Yeah.
Yes.
Thumbs up. All right. So we have a new sound system and new mics. So we're testing it up. So let's start with what? Praise to Manjushri. All right. Thank you. All right. Close,
should be like
close to my mouth.
Like it should be like here, like this.
Like this. All right. Krandi Andi. All right.
Great.
Is it really good? Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds his heart to scriptural texts embodies of the things of things as they are, whose understanding shines forth as the sun unclouded by defilements or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the patient love of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose encountering of the Dhamma rises from the stupor of our delusions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma, whose powerful sword of wisdom hews us suffering wherever his brows appear, clearing away the darkness of all ignorance. Our intuition, Manjushri, whose princely body is adorned with the 112 marks of the Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages, achieving the highest perfection of Bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O Manjushri, O loving one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness and close my mind. Enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so I might gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. Sashi Puki Joshi Metu Tamri Ranichi Sangye Mite Owa Nijokunanda Shinla Chupashu Idam Guru Ratma Mandala Kamiyakaya
Sangye
Chodam Sogi Chonam La Chancho Badu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Trishigi Betoma Dola Pinchi Sangye Robasho
Sangye
Chodam Sogi Chonam La Chancho Badu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Trishigi Betoma Dola Pinchi Sangye Robasho
Sangye
Chodam Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dami Yapsuji Dagi Chushigi Betoma Drola Pinchi Sangye Rolashu
Kangi Tuzi is on the Tawa from Jibon, which is from the Chun, the Padunjana Chandi. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
No.
You need to tap it on
So, I'll try just a second.
Okay. Okay. 이것도 지금 또.
Tibetan heads are really quite round. So Geshe will probably take some time to find the right fitting.
아니 내가 먼저 커버 털어야 아니 마고라 때 콜렉팅 거라서 간단하고도 아니 나이 가서가 나서디게 있지 아니 먼저 같이 잡도록 소도니 지금 뭐한 깔고 싶지 야미니 털어야 빼마서 펜도 총수스라.
So Margot in the media team has been working really hard on improving our ability to provide the teachings online and also here. So since the inception of COVID-19, she's been working on finding solutions, better solutions for our ability to broadcast the teachings online, as well as improving the audio system here at the Gompa. So thank you very much for that, Margot.
근데 담마고 이 나는 내가 직접 내가 디시다 가서 시트게 하고 있어. 뭐랑 알았다. 내가 제도비 아니 내가 좀 아니 아는 척봐. 제가서 아니 직 남비 이게 된다지 라스다 뭐 남비 안에 담보져서 안에 담보지 뭐 민지라 등하면서 티 कुछ कुंडराशिक सोत हुआ ना मैं थांबो लादन दे बेजला उमें बुद्धाशिक शांत हुआ ना लसना ये उमें बुद्धा यार जो ड्रामा योसा तदे yakshi दरवासा निधि हो ती हो चिक शांत ना सर्स लाइक आने चिक लास्ट में आने तो में
So Geshe sang the you me amana ane sto sang
और दी कुंडराशिक शांत हुआ and pay out the black dus ni lawa dus maje ke dus Geshe this laba I but dini uje ta kana be ta thade che da ni la man kana la idea ya mushi ngati kana la tapsi be out sa dini ti di ane chopale an kana chogi and be in shukya shinde dinani mazu thanda ki 아니 콘다샹이 단달라와는 그 상신 준절고 왔어. 아니 달라다 간지 돈이 아니 테스트. 내가 dim 매바이나 콘다 수당 줄지라 아니 kuchi고 샹고주나 배마서 공치고 차도스. 그 안에 견서 안에 수소진 근데 샹도도 디톨이야지. 아니 신들들 리어바는 얘기. 아니 콜을 나야도 그래서 이 랍초스라.
So Geshe had a conversation with Margot a few days ago, and Margot was asking Geshe about a statue of a female Buddha. She said, well, we have quite a lot of statues here on the property, but they are mostly statues of men or male. What about statues of female? And Geshe said, no, so in that sense, Geshe said that Margot gave him kind of a new job. So Geshe said that actually we have statues of Venerable Tara, for example, here. So that's a female Buddha. And Margot said that, well, that's the best. You could say that that's the best of the best Buddhas, but then we also need something in between, kind of maybe not yet Buddha, but still a female representative. So Margot came up with the idea of to have a statue of the first person to become a nun. When the Buddha was alive. And as she was speaking, I think that maybe you were kind of still holding your palms together, and Geshe said, you don't need to do that. But anyway, Geshe said that kind of since, if we would like to create a statue of the first person to become a nun, that's probably associated with the nuns community. So if the nuns want to have a statue of the first person to become a nun, then Geshe is kind of passing it on to you in the nuns community, and then you're meeting on Monday. But then the thing is that probably the more pressing thing is that it requires funds. No, it requires someone to sponsor or people to come together and sponsor the statue. And since we have a group of statues that are being prepared in Vietnam to be shipped to Australia, or they're either in the final stages of creation, or maybe they're being prepared to be shipped to Australia. If you are quick enough to get another statue and being sent together, then you will save a lot of costs in terms of freight. If you ask for a single statue, if you commission a single statue and also it has to be sent to Australia, then the shipping costs would be really high, and also it would be much more expensive. So anyways, Geshe is leaving it in your trusted hands. It's quite, yeah. It's quite, yeah. Not the animal, right? Geshe said I didn't put my hand down. I said, well, I'm not a nun. No, but also it's pretty awkward, because it's like if I don't put my hand up, does it mean that I'm against the statue?
No, we were asking the nuns. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. Just to make it clear, I'm not against.
So
that was your idea, Margot, right? Oh. So sometimes people come up to Geshe with ideas, and Geshe is supportive, but it does not necessarily mean that he has the ability to take the responsibility for everything that happens. So Geshe is still supportive of that, and just to show his token of support, is also offering $100 for them.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
We should have an F-post machine, just kind of put it out in the right time. Oh.
Me and the Zuchik dog and so this much.
So the statues that we are creating are made of stone. So we have lots of nuns, and we ought to make sure that a heart does not become like stone. No, so the statue is made of stone, but the mind needs to be still agile, not made of stone.
Those are his mind, and me rank, and me millia page, and his son she. So the Mundus Lagoma, just get on the debaters, in a month, one's chick, Pilia, Dozza chick, Tumbuchia, and a chick cheer, Tiburchia, the Katuski, and things of Yardo, teacher, and one's Sandy Temple, Chawachi 2 doors. Is a D engineering sandwich out of the straw.
So of course, it's not only for nuns, it's also for monks and nuns. All of us need to make sure that we do not become rigid like a stone. That we make sure that we work with our mind, that we find new ways of thinking, and also work in harmony with a sense of respect and appreciation of each other, so that we'd be able not only to support each other, but through that to support the Buddha Dharma.
That is some directions. Show Susu Togo Capernaum said. Lula Chabin Nimbo Susu Togo, Zashila Chabin Nimbo Susu Togo. Tambo Lula Chabin Nimbo Susu Togo. The truth only send that you won't have that. Children have been notion. Gonyam Chabin, you said.
Having said that, let's go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off last week. We're looking at the benefits on relying on isolation. Today we're going to pick up from point D, which consists of 2 points. So point D is a point on discernment. There are 2 points: discerning the antidotes to being attached to body, and discerning the antidotes to being attached to those dear to you. First off, when we look at verse 29, let's put it on the screen. Sorry. Having visited a cemetery, when will I equalize my body with the bones of others as being subject to disintegration? Or in the FMT translation, having gone to the Chandler grounds, when shall I deduce that this body of mine and the skeletons of others bear the property of disintegration? That's all.
Direct that Chidan Sajet Digi, so Dayan the service. So topic capacity, so was lonely. On the never conducting by now, never the Shadam Chigoras, never the Tamasogoras, never Tamos a tea, never Tamos so sick, you do the can't let any join with never jiggers, never did 100 sick, she tell it any part. She tell it then it's almost so rich. The Pena Chabadi, and in Anzulia, Nuji Chabare, never give you it. In the Chabadi, and that never so ya. Chabadi call it in Gidu, and it should tell it then Chabadi, Doctor Church. This song does rock.
So this section is dealing with, first of all, discernment. Discernment, which means that a conceptual consciousness that individually discern certain things. So for example, with respect to a fault, when we have faults, we need to clean them up. We need to purify and restrain our mind from those faults. And we do that in relation to the objects associated with those faults, in relation to which those faults have arisen. So for example, with attachment is detrimental, and we develop attachment with respect to a certain object. So in relation to this particular object, we need to overcome attachment.
Sick mama shoes later, Gonda said, see the page shoes he was. Gonda's love was at the layer, Gonda's malavina, and Gonda love good in the Drumaras. So the yachic Mandi was cheo, then it mid telaya, and it Gonda's love was the rock. But this origin is the bedin, this origin is rock.
Also, negativities that we create, they are purified and we restrain our mind in relation to the objects, relative to the objects of those negativities. In a similar way, when we apologize to a certain person, saying sorry, our apology needs to address the person that we've faulted. If we don't really address the person that we've harmed, if we just say generally we're sorry, our apology would be meaningless. You need to say sorry to the person that you have harmed. So here it works in a similar way.
Chakba yordi chakba rig mamu shuch. Ani chakba shukche should be kararedu. 디톨이야 수수주기 차고 숙취 가래도 디톨이야 인증이 상당한 거라서 디지디기 디차고 숙취 뭐디 아니 윤 가을 때는 윤구도 디스 아니 뭔지 치고 기침 그래서 패시에 넣은 뭔지야디 랑기 룰라 차고디 아니 숙취 윤구여서 그래서 내가 가서 내가 가르쳐 봐야 되냐 지금 류 소야 된다고 치냐 그럼 만슈드 류 소야 치든자 아니 차고디 룰라 미기 차고 소리 차고도 진짜 다 룰라 미기 차고디 도야야 아니 룰라 미기 아니 룰라 미기 성도 간다스당 것도 류디 차고기서 류디기 내출 간다져도 내당 간다져도 오늘 단위지 차고기 외사도 제도 덴지 돌아야 상당 것도 딜라고다 사실 방법이 룰라 차고 있는 거 소소도 와서 딜렌도서
So then in thinking of the basis of attachment, which means the object of attachment, first of all, attachment is a great fault. And we do have attachment. We have many different types of attachment. So then individually, what we should be thinking is, what is my greatest attachment? And then once you recognize what is your greatest attachment, you also need to be thinking of the object of that attachment as it arises relative to a certain object. This is an important step with addressing our attachment. So here Shantideva says that, for instance, we have great attachment to the body. We work in doing we take up different jobs or actions in order to sustain the body. So we are attached to the body. And then in order to overcome the attachment that we have to the body, we need to focus on the objects of the attachment, the body, and to develop a way of thinking in relation to the body. Like, for example, what is the nature of the body as an object of attachment? What is the makeup of the body? So we have to think of those points in order to overcome attachment.
내당 간다지를 슬라운지 비기다지 아니 이 가서다 찾아와디 간다지도 찾아와지 슬라운지 아니 저춘왕도 이어비기 아니 신기 로다 아니 소주 류님들이야 아니 비기다지 ดื้อ샤친 제바나 케바 카르도스 아니 지금 지양소르스 간지 단단 난주 유티 소주지 아니 시유 신데버지 제마도 아니 테다 차바나 저천나의 예비 로다 지금 지양 지임바디 상로당이 원진 제투바나 아니 차바기야디 야지야다바 슈총 드그라스라 디스동다 다간지.
So then in order to think of the nature of the body, in order to analyze my body, Shantideva says that, for example, if you were to visit a chanting ground and see corpses lying around, you can come to see that your body is exactly as the corpses that are lying around in a chanting ground. So then when you think of what is the difference between my body and what you find in cemeteries or chanting ground, the only difference would be in terms of whether it is together with a stream of consciousness or not, in the sense that currently our body is together with a stream of consciousness, whereas what you find in cemeteries or chanting grounds is not together with a stream of consciousness. But apart from that, the makeup is exactly the same. So certainly when you see that it is exactly the same, you can use that reflection in order to weaken the attachment that we have to the body.
남주 영이지 대바이나 차사지 차바기 여사지 싸우는 내바디 대나시 디 수수류 대나시 차대 여버지 통바이나 차바디 다 차발이야 이거랬어 다 데니지 텔레 슈체 땅와나 지 아니 계지기진 지도 무다른데 좀 써봐 아니 동학이란지 바로 써봤다 그저 땅도 가르러스 디디 땅바인다 룰레미 차바 간지 아니 수수기기 아니 차바 슈체모디 아니 도고레스 차바 도바이나 아니 로신줄로 차바 도바이나 디 샤원 큐르니 아니 지 미기위 차마 드르데야 미기위 차와들 때니 아니 지 나미 동하 베니 깨워니 깨워지니 논데고 상로 아니 도브레시 라 아니 까투에지 윤구연자 아니 착비님 때야기 개치슈는 치슈지 디송도 하스라
So were we to visit a chanting ground and see corpses that are lying around, or bones, skeletons, and so forth, and use that in order to inform our analysis and investigation, we can use our intelligence and wisdom to see that it is not suitable to become attached to something like that. And attachment is harmful to us, it is detrimental to us. We also use that in order to think of impermanence, momentary disintegration, and also the nature of suffering. And we use that in order to overcome the attachment that we have to the body. Not only we use that in order to overcome the attachment, through that we also then see that there are actions which are motivated by attachment, non-virtuous actions. And those non-virtuous actions bring about unrelenting suffering in a succession of lifetime, from one lifetime to the next. So when we reduce attachment, when we undermine our attachment and overcome it, we also then come to overcome the non-virtuous actions and the suffering that that attachment brings about.
추전 타도는 남시 다기 문제에 대해 추전 없이 원형을 차고 교령도 멤버 차고 야외유를 쏘았다 넘버 한발라 쏘았다 넘버 롤러 쏘고 주시게 차고스라.
In Geshe Dhammarincha's commentary, it says with respect to verse 29, bringing to mind the impermanence of the body, having visited a cemetery, make prayers thinking, when will my body equal the corpse and bones of those others that are subject to disintegration? Generate the recognition of decay as explained in the Mother of the Conqueror Sutra. Regarding generating the recognition of the impure body, also this very body of mine will cause even the coyotes which crave the impure to want to stay away from it and its stink of decay.
다지당 아주 아니 류자 전부 이면세다 아니 류라야지 가서 다지 이데메바 아니 깨지기지 유에란 신체바 아니 지 차바지 뭐바니 뭐디 아니 시치가야 시치 텐데 용 초고레스 용 외바지레스 디 디타투고니 나도 아니 갑질이야 지금 류딘 매장이란 신이바 아니 지금 지위치지이바 딘티시오니 류딜이야 지금 아니 베주치 메주스르지 코바이나 디양 코너테로 와서레스로 딩안도 때나 아니 라우르나야 다와제든 조치스라운디 아니 피기기다 지금 류딘데 짜침부인 단다 류리야 차바기즈니 베트로가 치고야지 그러 디 인지민이다 아니
So in this way, we think of the body as being something that we cannot rely upon, a phenomenon that is momentary and therefore disintegrating, something that is decaying. And yet, at the same time, we can think of the body from another perspective as having something that appeals to the mind. So we adopt different perspectives of the body in relation to different contexts. So this body, which is impermanent, which is disintegrating from moment to moment, it's not that we then come to think that therefore it is absolutely of no use to me. If you think that it is absolutely of no use to me, it is a mistake. Because when you look at the Lamrim teachings in the topic of a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses, we come to see that having such a body with freedoms and richnesses, although by nature it is unclean, it is impure, it is still of a great advantage. So we take different perspectives of the body, we observe it from different angles. On one hand, we can see that the nature of the body is unclean, impure, but still considering a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses to be of great advantage. So we might regard the body to be clean, to be beautiful, to be very appealing, but Shantideva says that it is not like that as the object that attachment portrays. So in relation to that, when we look at the next verse, verse number 30, it says, this very body of mine will also become so because of its odor. Not even the foxes will come close to this body of mine. There will come a time when such will happen.
If that kanji to truly give it, and that missions and simji shingi, and you want the soba, and you roll a soba, that be a chick, and you really big chick, and you chima to the back, to just challenge to give any pen that chick. Simji shingita roller soba, any chance or mother soba bed, any shuji being like saddle in ya, but do just shoot only one more target bed, any tell a monk or chapter, chinging about the soul. Didn't young there did not see give, not to Ludian, did not sing, you never see a mother, and it's your Tesla years about that. Mungubi charging years of the little in Maris. In the Mizami Ranjira, Jesse, in the Chava cases, Kiyomaris, did it song that.
The Tibetan text refers to the term chalni ground, which is very different to the cemeteries that we're used to, right? So we're used to cemeteries, which are nice places, clean and so forth. But the reference here to chalni ground is a place in which corpses are disposed of in an open space, or kind of lying around, decomposing. So Shantideva says here that a corpse might get to a point of decomposing and putting out odor that is so foul that even wild animals that might sometimes feast on corpses will stay away from that, not getting closer to a corpse that is stinking. So in thinking about it, we then develop an understanding of the nature of the body, such that it's not that some part of the body are changing and other parts are unchanging. The body as a whole is a phenomenon that disintegrates from moment to moment, and it does decay. Regarding generating the recognition of the impure body, also this very body of mine will cause even the coyotes or the foxes which crave the impure to want to stay away from it, and it stink of decay. Equalize your body with the corpse in the cemetery, in a sense that come to see the sameness of your body with what you find in a chanting ground, thinking it will come definitely like this. It is its nature.
대단 이번 자신을 찾아서 라 양한도 비기지 다 장기 자신 있으려면 다 까까를 옆에 아니지 속당고 총내야 디체도 땅투 상성벌지 땅게 인상성 빈티게 먼저야 로지에요 자신세 비기지 단년 파스 시비게 아니 자신이 선전 탐제 비기게 니 머신이 디체들도 소소들 동치 두야는 고고요레스 아니 너도 전부 네 고고스 네 많이 봐 우리 차베 샤만 교지 차당비 샤만 교지 아니 니엔타데 니신디 이든 자원이 내가 진짜 대를 차지는 무슨 안 자신을 찾고 니보다 소소도 버렸어 자신을 찾고 내린 거야 근데 니 지금 샤지긴 좀보다 좀 상관없어.
The next point is discerning the antidotes to being attached to those dear to you. So we have those who are dear to our heart, those who are close to our heart. And some are so close to our heart that we would even be willing to sacrifice our own life, to give up our own life for those people. So rather than thinking about it simply like that, we think here in this section of those who are close to our heart that we have a relationship of attachment with them. So those people that we are attached to, not only due to our heart, but we relate to them with a sense of attachment. Here Shantideva says that keep in mind that the objects of your attachment are not objects that can be relied upon. There are 3 points to that section. Attachment to those dear to you is unresistible. The reasons for that, and then thinking of oneself as a guest who spends the night in each place.
대단 자신을 참아 메리크 견생디 아니 르 지분 종아야 킨지기 샤르다 시기 소수 계교나 자와산다 지시는 소리 어디 차고라서.
So let's look at verse 31. Although this body arose as a unit, the bones and flesh with which it was born will break up and separate. What need is there to mention other friends?
네, 먼저 차고치 기온이 자신을 차고치 기온이 잠발라. 사원님이 그게 있지. 가서다. 지 카트스에 되게 좀 무슨 소리지. 상관없이 나 딘디지 차를 지금 차를 지나 아니 지 속방고 전에 배도 아니 랑소 방고 전에야 갑들이야 지 차를 쓰는데 아니 태점이어서 다 랑소 땅이 아니 지 아니 자세다 마트와 지 쇠요나 더 지거든지 쇠 자원이요 말이지 내가 가르치나 랑 기온이 소수치 기온이 소수 냠도 여비게 아니 샤다 주버서이 봐야냐 아니 소수 겐 소수 토레스 탑 아니 코 종이진 딘디지 봐야나 아니 내가 차베 왕비 때비 자세 타자 지식메스 딘디지 교로이 봤다 뭐뭐 거라서 진짜 그냥 딘디지 성 가신 땅에서
Some of our relationships with dear friends, those who are close to our heart, makes it so that it becomes impossible for us to be separated from those who are dear to our heart. This is sometimes how it appears to a mind that it is not possible to live without them. To the point in which when separation does occur, a mind becomes so distressed that some people even prefer to die. Some people even decide to kill themselves on account of separation. So had it been possible to make sure that we will never be separated from those who are dear to our heart, then you would say that there would be a reason for distress. But it is not possible to prevent separation, let alone being impossible to prevent separation from those who are dear to our heart. When we look at our own body, we cannot prevent separation from the flesh and bones of our own body, because one day it will come to pass. So if we, needless to say that we will be separated from the body that we have, why are we thinking that it is impossible for us to be separated from those who are dear to our heart? It would certainly happen. And therefore it is unreasonable to be attached to them in that way.
그래서 니들다 냠내스미디 그 제시같이 그게다 냠내기 내 뜻을 답변을 줘준다고 아니 냠내기 내 뜻을 디기 아니 디 로기도 소수 내신 아니 소수 메즈나를 케투바이나 텐데 메즈레야 펜토 메즈데레야 펜토 개워치만이야 펜토 링고로 답이기 자시세야디 아니 지 카트 잘 녀바지 그랬어 로 카트 녀바지 인자 니마질레야 카트 루그레스 그 뒤 걔는 아니 로범 체닝 말이 걔는 쉬닝 말이 뒤 걔는 배 아니 지 로제 친구 더 데트게 지 한다는 소고레세 디지그레도 왔어 이만도야 지 카트 그 카트 아니 니마질레 카트를 삼성 토니 지 비리야 지 식토메 춘중주 토니 아니 소소 마치 వచ్చేది 아니 카트 차와이나 아니 지 소수 초래야 계슈면이야 아니 파쇼 미생이야 슈치 아니 프로덕트한테야다 아니 마지워서야 인지 차바이 바이냐 지금도 왔어 소소래야 동아째바이나 가주스기 마지워이 대난시 몇 파쇼마 소여버지 아니 지 소소래야 땡땡고디 벨람선 비기 아니 남의 땅에야 민지와 간지 타니스 마노웨기 성로 땅에 터리야 아니 지금 남자도 소 케바이나 땡땡 메셀이야 펜토 용도였어 됐어.
So we need to know how to apply those points into our practice, how to bring it into our practice so that it informs our life. It is something that is integrated in our life to the point in which it helps us in this life, and it also benefits us in terms of future lifetimes. Like, for example, thinking of those who are dear to our heart. One day, we will inevitably be separated from them. So we can now make sure that when that moment of separation comes, that the mind will not be brought down by a sense of despair. We have to make sure that from now we prepare to that day so that we will not fall prey to despair. It is similarly when we think of how we take those teachings and bring them on to our practices so that it informs the way that we live our life, brings benefit to this life as well as future lifetimes. Something also applies to points like, for example, being able to be patient. So, for example, someone might be saying something that is slight to you, and if you cannot be patient with whatever is said to you, you feel pain, you feel hurt. So just as well, when you speak in a way that is inappropriate to others, they will also get hurt. They will also feel pain. So we need then to think that in the same way that I feel pain, that I feel hurt, also others respond to what I say in a similar way. So I need to make sure that I do not offend others, that I do not harm others. So if you think about it like that, then it is beneficial to you, and it's also beneficial to others.
간지 차바기 아니 차비기 네 데빌이야 아니 동만지에 란다 신이야 아니 동만레야디 아니 차비 데빌샤도스 라 먼저 까까야지 아니 차바디 야 제어인스랍지 아니 제위미 따데디 직진나 인질데이야 간지 먼저 제어인지 첨부세 제어다 차바니 뭐디 배드 넘버 먼저 해도스 Dishingo does. 저는 저 인지 전부 써야지. 인지 전부 저 용당기 아니 지 비게 누가 매와 균전신이 아니 지 누가 매와 균전신이 아니 비게야 누가 됐다는 지마 얘기 somebody 저 인지 전부신 저 차도 다 지금 랑기 대위 체도 아니 지 시안이야 가오치야지 아니 차비 저어디 이소를 드려도
Bueno, chocolate sour de color.
랑 대위 체도
The result of attachment is suffering to both oneself and others. Suffering is the result of attachment. Sometimes we confuse between great compassionate love and attachment. We think that they are the same, but there is a great difference, a vast difference between great compassionate love and attachment. With great compassionate love, you think others wish for no suffering. And since they wish for no suffering, may they be free from suffering. Whereas with a sense of attachment, we think, we have a sense of concern for others because we think that because they make me happy, because they contribute to my happiness, because they make me happy, may they be well. So great compassionate love thinks that may they be free from suffering because they wish to be free from suffering. And attachment thinks because it makes me happy, I wish others will.
그렇다. 저 인지 저어디 아니 지금 소소로야 기도 냉이 간다지 정박이냐 저어디 돈 말했어. 그래서 파쇼마 지금 대화 좋은 사람이 아니 somebody 파쇼는 동안 되고요 말이 아니 동안 되고 뭐 견전 체네 아니 곧 대화도 되는 찌모르냐 말 근데 딘디 좀 대화자 아니 다 시한이야 디기 가주 수용 봐야냐 랑기 샘이야 지금 차도다 젠섬 생이디 윤구요 말스 가와 고멘치 윤걸 디기 가주 이나야 아니 지 대화 되네 아니 차파디 비기게 아니 랑 대화 견전 체반자 소디 지 난지세 또 당지 마리고세 디기 나 냠비 로디기 아니 따주 가르스는 나 슬라우디 직수 칸이야 마덴바 아니 직 라운디에비 나치 싱거 따주 디 토니 아니 로스디 농축지마도 메이세 하스나 아니 딘디 나치 여바이노 나세 수 칸이야 뜨메기 아니 나치 소수산이 여바이노 따주 디거드 디자원이 이기메 완자 따주 된 농축이 맞지 디 시체니 아니 직 제동 상바 가르려바디 이 농축마도 디 지와 직자원이 차가서 말이지 인자 미리 견진 또 디레라서 자신의 차 미리 견진 또 디레셔서
So if you have a genuine sense of love to others, you will not discard or you will not dispense with the other person when a certain situation arises. So when you develop love and concern for others, you think they wish to be free from suffering, they wish for no suffering, they wish to be happy, and therefore may they be happy. And when they do get the happiness that they seek, it makes you happy. Rather than developing jealousy or competitiveness when others become happy, if you wish them to be happy, to be free from suffering, because you recognize that this is what they wish for, the more they're happy and the more they're well, the more you become happy. Whereas with attachment arises on the basis of ignorance, of grasping at the self. And with ignorance of grasping at a self, we have a sense of self, of I, as if I exist without depending upon anything else, as if I exist completely in and of myself. And this sense of I is completely mistaken. Had it existed in a way that ignorance makes it, there would be no problems. with attitudes such as, for example, attachment and so forth, because they would be then based on an independently existing self. But since the self does not exist in this way, there is no reason then to develop attachment and so forth, or the attitudes of attachment and so forth are not reasonable. And this is the main reason that is employed here in order to demonstrate that attachment to those who are due to oneself is without a reason. It is not reasonable. So thinking of the disadvantages of attachment, and also seeing that the object of attachment is not something that we can rely upon. Also thinking of the unattractive aspects of the object of attachment and so forth, through that we come to pacify our attachment. In coming to see that attachment is sole cause for suffering and the like. This is only whatever appears to a mind is only appearing because of attachment, but it doesn't exist in the way that it appears to attachment. So then, looking at verse 31, it says, although this body arose as a unit, the bones and flesh with which it was born will break up and separate. What need is there to mention are the friends? Looking at the commentary through this verse, it says, one should give up the craving for not being separated from friends and relatives. Even though this body came as one, if the flesh and bones, which were born at the same time, disintegrate and separate from each other, then what need is there to mention that one will be separated from friends that came unrelated through the power of their own individual karma? Think that you will quickly be separated. And a principal reason for stating that it is unreasonable to be attached to those who are dear to your heart is found in verse 32. It says, at birth I was born alone, and at death too I shall die alone. If the suffering doom cannot be taken on by others, of what use are hindering friends?
아니 상로 단수 지켜도서 차비 님만도 제단게 지금 아니 조금세 문제 예예데세 그저 좀 자이니 아니 처음에 요리 상대바이나 걔네 고데스 키무도서 차바랑 치 상당다 지금 티비 카드려야지 이게 아니 차비 때비 자시생 지기 아니 자로 체제야지 조고차 아니 로고 체제야지 용구들에서 아니 치위가야지 먼저 차비 이게 비 난신기 아니 얘기 토네 아니 지 냠도 용투야지 되서 수치하면 도와서 타는 딜레버 점마시 소소기 지 아니 다 동아춘지 봐야 되나 지 아니 부지기 소제비 지 소동아지 봐야 냠도 비려야 지 고셰 겹투야지 요마라서 자신 있으라지 아케란 초고 있으라지 아니 계란 동아도 고셰 겹고 can dimiji yong in the yong ser so in your maras the never some was and so gave it chavalya and it to survey kanji tonic gorgin chabi zashi digi gorgin chigre mado and it pentomundos is a kachigo study.
Here again, we think of the disadvantages of attachment. Such as, for example, thinking that, well, with a sense of attachment, there is that appearance as if we will not be separated from those who are dear to our heart, but can we actually make that happen? Not only we cannot prevent separation from those who are dear to our heart, at the end of our life, inevitably, that will occur. Not only inevitably we will die alone, in that there will be the pain of dying and then the pain associated with continuing completely alone. There is no one that we can take together with us beyond the point of death. So in that sense, attachment is unreasonable because you will inevitably be separated from those people. But also, while we're alive, if we do experience pain or suffering, it's not that we can share our pain and suffering with others. Now, this point does not say that there is no value whatsoever in having friends, that there is no point whatsoever in having those who are dear to your heart. It doesn't say that. It says that holding with them with a sense of attachment is unreasonable. So, in terms of sharing the pain that we have with others, should you be stung by an insect, for example, and you experience physical pain, it's not that you can split the pain and give some of the pain to another person to share it with you. It is completely for you to bear that pain. And similarly, upon death, the pain of death will be only our own pain. It cannot be shared with others. And therefore, as it says here, it is unreasonable to be attached to others. And not only it is unreasonable to be attached to those who are dear to your heart, it also hinders your spiritual practice. That chose to. Yeah. So with attachment to relatives and friends, at the time of death, we practice disattachment, detachment. So do you say detachment? Detachment. That your mind will? All right, so if you practice detachment, when you die, then your mind will not be disturbed at all. When they die. All right. So I'm just gonna make sure that the people at home are clear about the question. So Jason is asking with attachment to relatives and friends, then if you practice detachment, then when they die, your mind will not be disturbed by their death. Dila Zashela Chakwasia di Kesi Chakwa Meva Gombaina, Chapa Meva Gomaina, Soso Zashe Chombaina, Katoina, Soso Sem Yawa Meva de Chagris.
Geshe Chaksam do Tubaina, Chaksam Doya di so di Chayu Niluton, Chaksam Dogondas, that's it, and then Medavi into the soba. The D Tonche and Chava Meva, that's it, and Chobot Chaya, Dikalia, or Medavi is on Tonding in Jibana, and it's your Metavali, and someone thought that that's power budget, there something, some of your Vana, and it's same Pilia, and it's shim there down. What did you say about us?
In dealing with attachment, for example, attachment to those who are dear to your heart, we recognize the impermanent nature of those who are close to our heart. Like, for example, our friends. When we recognize that they also disintegrate from moment to moment, they're also subject to death and impermanence. You know that death will occur at one point. And when you are able to reconcile with the fact that death will occur at one point, your mind does not become that depressed when it comes to pass. Just a note on translation. In English, sometimes we take detachment to be the opposite of attachment, but in Tibetan language, it is called non-attachment, right? So I think that detachment has a certain connotation in English, which is not necessarily the one that you get from the word in Tibetan. So in Tibetan, it's just a non-attachment. So with non-attachment to others, you can still cultivate compassion. And sometimes you might even mistake a certain physical appearance to be an appearance of attachment, where it could be actually an appearance of compassion. Like, for example, when someone dies, one person might shed tears because of attachment, whereas another person will have tears of compassion. So sometimes we can become teary in situations where we treat others with a sense of compassion. But even when that happens, it doesn't happen with a mind that feels completely at loss. Right? So even if you become teary, it doesn't mean that you have great grief in your mind and your mind feels a complete sense of loss. Okay. Jason?
Yeah, it seems like you could have tears arise, but then what Geshe is saying, with someone else, they might see.
So you can say that you could have tears when someone that is dear to your heart passes away. Then the following day or quickly kind of you recover from that, whereas someone with a sense of attachment might take a lot of time, or maybe weeks and months on end to recover from the loss of someone that was dear to their heart. That case is Geshe chik tongwai narwa. That sansan sem shumnaya pesh nimachi nimani dijela sem sogres. Ine chaba chemboyo na Geshe chik choi na pesh da sansan dawa mambo junta mambo dawa mambo sem shumne sem pomba dawa pesh degres.
Jadi dasam da maşına yani görünümü değer yorosra samda maşidi ya samı şu tanşın bayna yani peki da inci keli kaduyne yela koyace yon çosarasra.
Yeah, such things happen if you don't know how to think about those situations properly. Whereas if you do know how to think about those situations properly, it could still be the case where you've been thinking about a particular person frequently, all the time that they're in your mind, but your way of thinking about them is not incorrect.
그래서 나 간지 간주 로팜바당 아니 로팜바당 인지 기분이무디 무엇이와이노 인지 기야디 양센치 소소 균센 마치와 그 인지 기사기 유코란 균센 제치입니다. 지금 응으로 왔더라 된다지당 간주로 나다 지금 하마도 소리야 다 차고 이랬다고 열었어 네 깜깜이야지 pena hama gingo thung sambala ani ninje ta ninje ta khar ki do no chi ni kini ya bu chi ya chi ne thu yo no mena sambi sam no lo ya chi no ya ji dos te di chi ti cha chi bu mai ba ro ani mi di chi ani kyo juni chi dendro ji ya chi kero chi na sambi samlo di 차고치고 아이나 성성을 봐. 그냥 차고도 여대여라서 아마래요.
There's certainly a difference between a mind that is deflated, that feels a sense of loss, and a mind of compassion. So sometimes we react to a certain situation with becoming teary and do feel a sense of loss in a mind or grief, but that can also happen with compassion. So it's important to sometimes separate them out. Like, for example, with a parent, we certainly have a certain degree of attachment to a parent. And although we have attachment to a parent, sometimes when they pass away, we also think about it in terms of compassion. Like, for example, thinking, what type of birth did they take following their death? May they be able to attain a pleasant state of rebirth in a succession of lifetimes. So although we have a sense of attachment to our parents, it doesn't mean to say that that cannot also come together with compassion and thinking of the welfare in the future lifetimes. So Geshe reckons that these two together are possible.
인제 양재기와 관련해서 연구하는 성성지. 덴로질이야. 이 야고시 깨나 삼비. 아니 소축 잡에톤 아니 많이 사직마도 담아두나. 망감 잡아이나. 덴덴 소수 센데나오야. 아니 렌제 김제와 사무주의자 덴덴 팽규였어요. 덴난신 게지. 같이 소수 사상이는가. 소수 공부도이는가. 아니 지금 가장 그 선단이 초초모이면은 인지가래야 소소리 저와 찾아서 아니 지금 삼바도 남다 그게 아니 지금 다 거의는다 뭐였는데 지금 깨어지는지 덴로 지키는 깨로 전화 삼비 공원 삼부지 캐니 만남 잡아이나 덴데 팽겨서요 다들 맞지부터 땡이 지금 아니 차가도래 실사를 가르치는 실성성소를 지나
So when your parent died, for example, if one of your parents died, then if you think, may they attain a good rebirth in the next lifetime with a sense of compassion. And with thinking of their own benefit, you recite even one recitation of Om Mani Padme Hum, it is certainly beneficial. And the same thing can be said with respect to other people that are dear to your heart. It might be your partner, might be one of your children, might be one of your more distant relatives, or someone that is dear to your heart. When they pass away with a pure motivation, you think of, may they experience benefit, to do some recitations for them. Certainly that is beneficial.
당한 남주기 직성단단을 개발해 왔습니다. 저는 이 파워 총링이 개나 공부 줘버렸어. 근데 파워 총 카드를 양이 상담 만남 돼야지. 직 파워디 개원이야지. 덴루스 개원을 전화 삼성. 디기어 쇼선이 만남 돼 디마도 초와 셴바스 키문도스 이 야지 야다바이 그 게나 공부 좀 가리야 나 기원 겐 딘디지다 최고 쇼성성기 뭐는 게 대마다비 지긴 아니 지 르데 야부지래 기어셔서 성공하는 고문스 그 빌려야 지 아니 겐라 아니 그 제마들이야 아니 캬바진지 임바디 소스 상황을 야차 야담바 이시스를 르 칸디지 네 양양아 아니 겐드지 제워쇼 성성 그 딜리기 상황거다 딜레데니야 양봉남 자다고 로가지 임무도 알아.
Geshe's father passed away a long time ago, and in thinking about his father, he made prayers for attaining a good state of rebirth in a succession of lifetime. But when his teacher passed away, rather than making prayers for a good state of rebirth, the type of prayer that he was making was wishing for being able to meet with his teacher and not be separated from him in future lifetimes. So he didn't feel that he had to do prayers for a good rebirth for the sake of his teacher, in having no qualms that certainly on the basis of what his teacher has done in his life, he will have a good state of rebirth. So his aspiration was to never be separated from him in future lifetime. So we do carry out such aspirational prayers for the sake of those who were close to our heart when they pass away, but it doesn't mean to say that those prayers are always the same. You can also have different prayers for the sake of those who are close to your heart.
다간징 안주 차베기 따당비 인지미 문제 체트는 아니 직에 가서 따지 차베 왕기 아니 자도 디디기 간지 개와체발이야 케체데 차건자 아니 딘지 이치 케제 망구지 아니 루루 체고야 이게 제니를 말했다 간지 인지 계시 마무지 아니 소소의 수연이 팬도요 말스 계신 자비 지식 자세 디 가지수기 뇽 와이느야 아니 이야기를 세 드레도스.
But not only that, attachment forms hindrances for our creation of virtue, and sometimes kind of those things which are adverse to virtue come together and create the great hindrance for virtue. So what's the point in holding on to those hindrances to virtue? As Shantideva says, if the suffering doom cannot be taken on by others, of what use are hindering friends?
대회는 종세 린직 내장스 비 다지 종세 린직 내장 텔라 셴바 government 기 나와 란치 게 주시 채나와 되니 지금 채데 텔라 때는 디버사비 남이 동아도 소 가와 셴다기 깨와 셴다기 동아도 소 깨와 셴다기 밀레나 게위 케치는 자위 지식차
The commentary says, although one stays together for a short time, there is no need to grasp at that, because when one is born alone, and when one dies alone. Since others will not take the sufferings of one's ripened result of the karmas that one created in relation on them or to them, what good are those friends that obstruct the creation of virtue? As one is not benefited by them in the slightest, it is unreasonable, unsuitable to be attached to them.
Teresi kanji keje zawo tungi nandra neje ge bigi and drasongi tsam log ti zawo di nimutusum se di rendo asra nimutusum se di res dinza ta nimutusum doya ge and tab yona menandi nimu pambigi and nimu ponji nimu yona menandi and dame bitawasindi sondo asra dame gomni tawatogu sondi sanji chuda tomomai badras dame go gomni and sanji kombaduya dia sanji chu tomomai ba diredo asra dinza gombuludura anda Rinjin Tamanamaya, Kanji Keranlia, Nanzi Pomatuanas, Nanzi said, Danzi, Danzi Pomatuana, any Yani Yandipi, Chadan Kigri, any Koala Kigris, Gunche Maris, Lesagris, Le Marosagris, is a Tatu Kerangi, Danzi Chambor Danzi Chum, Danzi Chumbaino, and Chadan Zawa, and jump to Chadan jump to Kanji Tatu Nanzugi, Dame was said, Munziche. Now Yambi Louis, Chatsuki, and you didn't trouble David, not the you make Tolia, sometimes so deep, and it's not said, and it Tolia, sometimes there must have a kitchen with service. Nothing, and it's not now Yambi, not the, and it's now Yams a chick hall, then now Yam. Jit Tony not Seju Kayo Layo Pendoch. Yajatam, these are
not only attachment to those who are close to your heart creates hindrances to a practice, but also other attitudes, such as, for example, disliking enemies and so forth. Needless to say that they create hindrances for us. In essence, anger, attachment, and ignorance create hindrances for us. So then, in order to overcome our anger, attachment, and ignorance, we need to apply antidotes to them. And the antidote that is applied to anger, attachment, and ignorance, essentially at the end will have to do with the meditation on selflessness, which is an aspect that is unique to the Dhamma of the Buddha. The meditation on selflessness will come to remedy anger, attachment, and ignorance. And this is the point that the protector Nagarjuna referred to in his Ratnavali, the precious garland. And it says that without abandoning grasping at the self, anger and attachment will repeatedly arise in your mind. And through that, you will be kept in samsara, and you won't sever the continuum of suffering in that cycle of existence. So what you then need to do, Nagarjuna says, is to abandon grasping at the self. So in order to abandon grasping at the self, we need to, first of all, identify what it is. And we do that in relation to the notion of self that arises in our mind. So grasping at the self is grasping at something as if it exists objectively. So it is important to observe this sense of I that arises in the mind when we think I or me. We do have grasping at our own self as if we exist objectively or independently. So it's extremely important to think of that sense of self, the notion of self that arises. And one point to think of is, first of all, in relation to what this sense of self arises, what is the basis for the rise of that sense of self? And how does it arise? In what way does it arise? It is extremely important to think of those issues, and then in order to later on down the track to be able to identify our grasping at the self.
Sanji loves a tattoo deredos, and on the king piggy, name of solving, king cheon calculea. The doya zodi is to cut the name person, chada mosum din. Rock, Yungi, the Silros, rock. Dinza, the zoo doya said the Sanji soya di, damn ever go yet. He do study, Sanji something digi, and it Nigeria, Geshe, Kanji. And ja doyagi tab yanamen dameva komya sosos dameva this time on one is in the Nuji share chedo shabrum yakshudi dame gomya sanji disondas dame gomya tangan di dame vithanaya dame vithanaya some chiamatanche ani tan drama kazuten devainaya and Nishi dogs had the Kabushuch, 차기도서 차기 가슴 뇌식이 인고래요. 그러면은 뇌식 더 말았어. 인제 참선 갖고래 먼저게 산지 제수 죽지 아니 죽 마신 아니 유르무스 하대 근데 차고서 선선 소디스라
In order to abandon harm, or a harm doer, we need to meditate on selflessness. Similarly, to bring about benefit and bliss to others, we do that also through meditating on selflessness. So when we experience problems, sickness, and so forth, the way to overcome that would be to overcome our afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and ignorance. And this is what the Buddha, the Bhagavan, taught in his Dhamma, the meditation on selflessness. So sometimes when we experience adversities, either in terms of facing an enemy or experiencing sickness, contagious disease, or what have you, we think, I need to rid myself of these adverse conditions. And the way to do that, if you think about it in terms of the essence, the essential point within the Dhamma, the way to do it would be to develop a meditation on selflessness. This is the best way to rid yourself of such adversities, to meditate on selflessness. And without thinking of the meditation of selflessness, we might try to deal with our problems and difficulties in a variety of ways, but we're not going to be able to essentially rid ourselves of our problems on a deeper level without the meditation on emptiness. It's going to be really hard to remedy a situation if we're not going to meditate on selflessness. So it's a good point to think of, because sometimes we might be thinking that I've been around the Dhamma for a very long time and I haven't accomplished much, or not many things have changed for me. And it could be the case if you haven't spent time on meditating on selflessness.
Tako di gyene da ko yon chogor mado kaya layo gute kaptu rangi nimbo tengi di shimeto gute do dame ko komso di rema dos ra na se ani nganzi shu chembu di ani loke sa shi nai tin ani dame wati gomba na kaptu koran ya pe ani bam ge so shago sa ra Geshe ya dam yo sar sang dos ra.
And when you meditate on selflessness, you can meditate on selflessness with respect to different objects, with respect to a cloak or a flower and so forth. We say that grasping at a self is the source of all faults. But while you can meditate on selflessness with respect to cloak and flower and so forth, will it change a lot? Will your situation change a lot if you just meditate on the selflessness of flower? Rather than that, you need to meditate on your own selflessness. So we have a sense of self that arises in our mind when we think I or me. So thinking of selflessness, meditating on selflessness with respect to me, when the sense of I or me arises in our mind, is like obliterating it with a powerful bomb.
Marvel shoot and the shoot it and then netting lagi manzo dawa good in the ya ani konda chu dunda re konda chu the keva ni shogi shudanga chega par dawa good in the nimachi machi ani kanjis zambeling deki chit kali kevshade and just yes.
So before we finish our session here for today, Geshe also wanted to mention Nathan on top of what he said about Malgo, the contribution of Malgo. For the last probably 9 months, Nathan has been doing a night shift every week as a support for the prayer-thon, prayers for not for the sake of COVID-19, for eliminating, pacifying COVID-19, that are done by monastics all around the world. And things like that certainly bring about benefit to a great number of beings. So thank you very much, Nathan. So it's not just Geshe here alone, or we here alone are saying thank you, Nathan. It's more like Geshe says that as a representative of everyone around the world. Thank you very much, Nathan. All right. Due to this virtue, I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhisattva not yet born arise. May that the reason not incline, but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all pathogen and resistance in Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends. Europe holds the subduer's moral weight, serves and bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, protector of myself and others, your disciples. Please live long. Thank you.